So, first of all, hi everybody. It's crazy. Because like you said, last year I got the opportunity to speak here for a chapel chat, and lots of things have happened since then. I've graduated, I've made new friends, I've taken on new roles at different places via occupationally, whether it be for 2 different churches in that time span, starting at American Eagle doing retail, which is fun all in itself, and also last time I prepared this really long sort of like speech format, and then it turned out to be asking questions and answers. So everything you're about to get right now is completely extemporaneous and honestly 100% I guess not scripted. Which is, if you're like, no, but you're an actor, you should memorize things, he probably has this memorized, he's just saying this. No, I'm really not. Okay, so first of all, my story kind of begins in, we'll say the western part of Mount Juliet. My parents both met. My dad was part of the military. My mom was a nurse. They got married, and then when my dad retired from the military, he became a pastor. So if that gives you any idea on the kind of family values and rule sets that went along the lines, I mean, you can kind of pick and choose where you're at. Strict parents. Well, we started going to a church when I was 5 or 6 because we'd just gotten back from Germany, from where my dad was stationed. And my dad was asked to preach a lot, but he wasn't actually asked to be a pastor, right? They were like, you're good enough to preach on a Sunday morning, but as a whole, you can't do the thing. And I was like, Dad, what's the thing? And he's like, well, son, one day you'll know. I'm like, you're good enough to do the thing. I see you're good enough to do the thing. Like, you have the opportunities, take them. And my dad said, one day you'll know what I mean. And the longer we stayed at that church, I'm like looking at one person. I'm like dead set. I'm like, this is my person. The longer we stayed at that church, the more I recognized that there were a lot of things going on that I didn't understand. My dad loved Jesus. He loved the Lord. He read his Bible every day. He did all the things a good wanting to be pastor did. But at the end of the day, everyone else was like, you're just not ready yet. You're just not ready yet. Well, then whenever it came time for him to actually step into the role as to lead the church, we were actually at that time asked to leave. But it wasn't because my dad wasn't qualified, though they did want a few more qualifications. They're like, do you have your doctorate? And my dad's like, what? A doctorate? Who gets a doctorate in the missionary Baptist field? Well, we ended up being made to leave because my mom was white. I was like, wow, that's crazy. This is the first time I've experienced racial discrimination. Come to find out, I've started looking back, I'm like, well, no, all my cousins, all of my mom's side of the family kind of hit me from both sides, and was raised in the church, raised to, love one another, all of the good things. Well, then we get to school, and I'm a little bit different than everybody. I live in Mount Juliet at the time, was going to West Elementary, had all these cool friends. And at Mount Juliet, I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, it's not super diverse, but it's just diverse enough, there's enough of a cultural blend where people are like, okay, someone of a different nationality, that's cool. I was there for the first 3 years in school, and I thought it was awesome. Well, then we moved out to Tucker's Crossroads, and by this time, I have this big, thick southern drawl of an accent that sounded like this, all right? But I loved me some music. I used to sit on a rock in our backyard and try to sing all the great country hits. Now, the longer I talk like this, you guys are like, he didn't start off sounding like that. And I'm like, well, honestly, I did. I used to look at my dad and say, Daddy. I used to look at my mom and say, Mama. Okay, whew. Man, thinking back on that really does give me a little bit of PTSD. Thank the Lord for 6 months of speech conversion therapy. And you're like, what? Well, I got to be in middle school. And that's when I found out that I didn't just have a or a love for music, that's what I wanted to do with my life. I want to do something with music, I want to do music. And I had this teacher named Tony Cook, and he goes, well, I'm willing to work with you. He's like, you're in middle school, you're the only boy in choir, I kind of have to use what I've got here. You're not really a bass because you're 12. The boys haven't dropped. You also still a tenor, so we can't really make you a soprano. You're going to be what we like to call a alto 2 or a boy alto. I was like, okay, cool. But he goes, you can't sing like that. And I was like what, Mr. Cook? And he goes, well, we're singing Les Mis and Phantom of the Opera, so you can't be singing, do you hear the people sing? Or angel of music. And I go, well, how do I sound pretty like that? How do I make my voice go differently? He said, well, we're gonna have to start working on it. 6 months later, we have the voice you guys hear today, okay? I am still a struggle, still it is. Well, that actually, during that time, kind of sparked my interest not only in music and my desire for it, but also theater. And I didn't know really what I wanted to do with it, but it was fun, and it got to be the 8th grade, and he was like, okay guys, we're gonna be doing Annie. And I was like, okay, cool, Annie's a girl. I can't of course be Annie unless we decide to change it to Andrew, which, still waiting for the day that someone wants to gender swap that entire musical. I would make a fire Miss Hannigan, or Mr. Hannigan, okay? But the song choices would have to be switched up a little bit because it gets creepy. But, so we're doing that show, and I really, really, really wanted to be Rooster Cogburn. You know, he's got this Jersey accent, he's talking like this, and I was like, I just learned how to not speak country, and Mr. Cook tells me, goes, yeah, but if you start speaking like that, you're gonna get stuck with that. I was like, oh, let's not do that. He wanted me to be Daddy Warbucks, okay? I had hair, by the way, that was much longer than it is right now. Oddly enough, it was this exact color because my sister pulled this horrible prank on me by putting bleach in my leave-in conditioner, okay? So it was this color, this about longer than this, and he goes, you're gonna be Daddy Warbucks. And I go, okay, that guy's bald. And he goes, yeah, that guy's bald. And we just kind of looked at each other for a second. And I go, you want me to shave my hair, don't you? He was like, yeah. And I go, well, why? Like, I'm already at this point, like, I know I'm the visage of perfection right now, okay? But I was this, like, 5'4", I don't know where 5'4" lands, probably like right here, 5'4" little chunkster of a human with teeth that could land a biplane on them, okay? And you want me to shave my head bald too in middle school, the most formative years of my life? And he looked at me, he's like, yeah, I do. So I was like, okay, cool. So I ended up shaving my head, doing the show. It was so much fun. By the way, the pictures from that, oh man, we'll do a little cue ball Maya, okay? So that show springboarded even further. Well then, that summer I got to do a show called Oliver, which is my favorite Broadway musical ever. Love it so very much. It's like basically, I guess it is the guy version of Annie. Huh. Okay, so love that show so much. Well, then I get to high school and I'm like, guys, I need to reinvent myself. I need to do this, which I feel like some of you right now, even though you're like, what, a month into college, right? Some of you are like, yeah, I had to reinvent myself. I used to like books. Now I don't even want to buy them. I used to be on my computer all the time, you know, kind of thing like that. But I reinvented myself completely. Like, it wasn't just like, okay, guys, I'm gonna go from liking music to sports, okay? But that's actually kind of what happened. That entire summer, my dad was like, okay, well, I'm gonna make you run track in high school because he held all of Middle Tennessee's track records for 15 years after he left high school. He still holds a few of them, okay? I was only able to break 2 of them. And even then, they got broken like a year later. So I'm like, did I really even do anything? But he made me run that entire summer. Anytime I try to sit down and start like doing music, playing piano, trying to like, you know, maybe I want to start doing more of this. My dad was like, no, go run, do sports. Go run, we're gonna go run outside. So I ended up running that entire summer, 5 to 7 miles a day. I ended up losing something like 22 pounds. I grew an entire like 8 or 9 inches. Kept my head shaved on the sides, got braces. I walked into high school, nobody recognized me. It was great. I got to have a fresh start. And what did I do with said fresh start? I decided I was going to keep myself so incredibly busy that I would not even think about my passion or my art that God had given me at all. Like, I didn't sing, I didn't dance, I didn't do musicals. The only reason why I was in choir was because I needed it for like a fine arts credit. The first 2 years, right? So I'm doing choir, and then my dad, oddly enough, after banning me from doing all the things theater that entire summer, goes, hey, Miss McKinney really wants you to do the play at the high school. And I go, and? She looked at me and goes, well, you're gonna do it. And I go, you're making me do track and soccer right now in the spring, and you want me to add a play on it? And he goes, yeah, she used to scare me when I was in high school, and she still kind of does, so you're going to do the play with her. And I was like, fine, I guess I'll do the play. What's the play? At least let it be something cool, like Guys and Dolls, something where like the men like, yeah, you know. He's like, okay, cool, it's Little Women. Look at me, go, okay, to my knowledge, that musical sounds like it'd be something like about Little Women. He's like, yeah, you're right, it's about 4 women and their mom. And he starts kind of like explaining, I'm like, first of all, Fred Allen Bender Jr., how do you know any of this? You've never looked at a musical in your entire life. And he looked at me and goes, well, she sent me an email telling me to tell you all of this and that you're going to do it. And I was like, okay, cool. So I auditioned for it, and I think I'm going to get to be like one of the main characters. Hurrah, get to be that guy. Well, I'm a freshman. What part am I going to get? I get stuck in leotards. Like, when we're talking leotards, like I'm talking like really short, floofy pants, this tight shirt that's unbuttoned down to here, right? And black leggings. And I'm like, if I wasn't getting bullied enough before for being just a little bit different than everyone at Lebanon High School, I'm definitely getting bullied now, Dad, especially if they come and see it. And he's like, no, we're going to do it. So we go through the rehearsal process, and I'm seeing everyone's passion for this show. I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. And then I start seeing some of their talent. I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. And then it turns out that my freshman crush, who was also a senior in high school, was the lead, and I was like, okay, she's kind of cool. Okay, so like she was super, super talented, and all of their talent, like I don't know if you guys have heard this, but talent draws in more talent. The bigger the group of people that are on fire for something, the more other people who are kind of like, I kind of want to see what that's about, are going to be more willing to go jump into it. So I was like, okay, I was all in. I was even one of those theater guys that was like, I'm not crying, it's the last show. I'm not crying, guys. No, I'm not doing that. I played football earlier last year. I'm not crying. What do you guys mean? But it was so good. And then I got to, even though my life was crazy, I did all of that. I did every show after that in high school, and all the things that Mike was talking about at First United Methodist, I got to be in their choir, and because, of course, at that point, if my dad's going to let me do theater, he's going to let me do choir at other places. I'm like, what better place than a church? Joke's on him, though. It was United Methodist. Love my Methodist fam, honestly. I really do. And I was like, Dad, they're singing different types of music. I like this a lot. Wendell Little, cool dude. And he was like, fine. So I did all of these things through high school. And honestly, I was kind of stuck in this rut of too many choices, which is kind of where maybe some of you are today, if we're being honest, because you're just starting. Maybe you have a major, you probably do, or you're undecided, or you're here because of Tennessee Promise. And the options are literally limitless. Okay, you've probably heard this. The sky's the limit. That's where I was at. I graduated high school. My parents had just recently gotten separated. I was kind of given like the free roam of the land at that time. And I was like, oh man, this is a big world. Parents are fighting, I have siblings, and I don't know what to do. So I took 6 months off of school, right? I was like, well, let me go try and do something else with my life, join the workforce right off the bat. So I did construction. And can I tell you, construction, love it, and if you're gonna do it, do it. I have so much respect for you. But do I look like I do construction? If all of you are answering no, then you are correct. Okay, I'm not good at it. I'm not. And I did it for 6 months. Well, then I had a friend who was like, hey, let's go to an open house or a college tour day at this place called Trevecca Nazarene University. I was like, I don't know what a Nazarene is, but sure, you're one of my highly attractive friends. I will go with you wherever you ask me to go. Okay, so I signed up and was like, cool. Stayed on the campus that morning. And I'm like looking around, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna like this. Not feeling it. But I got this program director for the major that I, on a whim, signed up for, and it was the worship arts program. So basically to write worship music, to lead worship, all that good stuff. Become a worship pastor, basically. That kind of filled in the spot for my dad, because my dad was like, either you're going to go into the military or you're going to become a pastor. There's one or the other. You don't really get a choice. And I go, but what if I join the military and then afterwards I go and do something else? He's like, if you go into the military and leave, it's either because you died or you're going to be a pastor. And I was like, oh, so really you've put me in a box about this big. And he goes, yeah, but about that high too. I was like, at least you recognize it. Well, I get there and I'm like, okay, this checks off a box. I actually enjoy music. I enjoy singing, I enjoy all the things. At some point I'll learn how to play an instrument, because at the time I was fooling myself into thinking I knew how to play piano. Man, those days, that senior talent show. Oh Lord, so much embarrassment, okay? But I started doing that major. And there was this part of me that was like, yeah, you're filling this out and you're doing it, but is this really what you're wanting to do? And I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is what my dad wants me to do. This is what the rest of my family does. This is, it blends my faith in with my occupation. And then I got an internship to go to Arkansas and be the co-worship pastor with one of my role models. You guys may not know him. Honestly, if you do, then I would be like, let's be best friends. But his name is Clay Cross, and he was a Dove Award artist. Like, Dove is the Christian equivalent of, like, your Grammy for your music, basically, okay? He was that guy. And I was like, this dude right here, I've been singing your song since I was 4. Let's do it. Got an internship with him, like, out of the blue. I started recording a album. I started leading worship at his church, conducting the choir. We even went on tour, okay? Like, it was so cool for like 3 months. It was amazing. It was the best. Dude, I had everything I wanted. Like, literally everything. I was away from my family. I was making good money, but I was not fulfilled. Like, I wasn't happy. I was like, what's going on? Like, I was praying about it, and I was like, I don't get it. Like, why am I feeling so much discontent? What's going on? And it's because it's not what I wanted to do. And it's really not what I was designed to do, honestly. Like, yeah, I was getting to sing every Sunday, woo, but I wasn't getting to do anything else. Like, there was no creative part about what I was doing. I was taking other people's music and leading it on a Sunday morning. And then I was also underneath a church staff that, honestly, they didn't like me. And it was because, well, I was half black. And you like look at it and you're like, in the church? And if you're not doing that, then you're good. There you go. Like, yeah, the church even too, they were very much, again, prejudiced against me. And I had a staff position in the church. Like, it wasn't like I was just a laity member. Like, I wasn't just like sitting and listening on a Sunday. Like, I was actively contributing. And for whatever reason, I felt so empty. And so then we went to a church camp. I was like, yay, because I just love being here for the entire week. I was feeling like super tired, and I was like, God, what do you want me to do? What is the next step? Do I stay here? Do I accept a full-time position, or do I leave? Well, the word I was praying for, I was like, I just need some clarity, okay? I need to understand, because right now I'm still being crushed by choices that I didn't think that I still had. Like, what's going on? I'm making you real uncomfortable. I'm going to do my best to not look at you the rest of the time. Like, I'm not wearing my glasses, so it's like, poof, like laser beams. Well, we went to this camp, and the theme was actually clear. I was like, we'll see what happens. And I get these group of 8th grade boys who don't know how to put on deodorant, okay? And I'm having to like try and keep them alive through the entire week from session to session, which if you've ever had to do that, it is a barrel of monkeys worth of fun and chaos, okay? So I'm working with them, and I prefaced it with, hey guys, I'm gonna be super honest with you, I'm gonna be transparent. Oh, hit the microphone. Okay, the only way that any of you are gonna grow or maybe even learn something is if you're just honest. Like, if you feel something, like, say it, like, let's talk about it. Well, then we're talking about that the entire week, and I kept getting this little inkling of like, hey, you're gonna do this. I was like, what is this thing? And I kept having like dreams of being back on stage, but not leading worship, like doing musical theater. And I was like, no! I was like, what are these? That's weird. And I'm not telling them anything. And we get to the last little prayer time before we go to the last session where the guy speaks, and he's like, okay, it's that time where he's like, and you have power, and you have power, and you have power, and go do these things. You know, the things that we like to make fun of on YouTube. So we went, and during the middle of the prayer time, I like started laughing, and they're like, Jeremiah, why are you laughing? What's going on? And I was like, nothing, guys, it's nothing. Like, there was this little thing going on in my head, and I was like, it's not a thing. And they're like, no, like, what? Remember, you gotta be transparent, you gotta be honest, I was like, okay, fine. Like, oddly enough, I felt like the Holy Spirit told me that I was going to be in New York for at least 5 years doing what I love. And they're like, well, what do you love? What do you love? And I go, I don't know, like musical theater, I guess, but that's something that I left a while ago. Like, there's no way I can still do it. And they're like, no, remember, like you said, delayed obedience is disobedience. You just got to do it. And I was like, get my words out your mouth, okay? So we get to the last session, and the guy is speaking, and he's getting ramped up. He's talking about, Jonah, he was going to Nineveh. He was supposed to go here, but instead the fish had to take him and get him back to the direction that he needed to be. So God let him get really small so that God could be really big, and then God used him for awesome things. And Jeremiah, like, he died single and alone. Just kidding. But like, he did things too. He got thrown in a mud pit. Paul, he did this and this. And I was like, let's wrap it up. Come on. I got to get these guys in bed the next 30 minutes or they're not going to bed. And we have a 5-hour drive tomorrow. Well, then he gets to this last part and he gets like really quiet. And he's like looking down at his notes. And he goes, maybe, just maybe you need to take a chance. And he went through and described this encounter that he had with an NFL, I think it was a tight end or a tailback, right? And where he was from, he had never been exposed to American football until one day his friend showed him a clip, and the guy was like, I want to do that. I should do that. And his friends were like, no, that's not sensible. You can't do that. There's no way that that's going to be what you should do. 2 years later, he was the highest paid tailback or tight end, whichever one it is, in all of the NFL for doing something that was just an inkling in his brain, like, I should maybe do this, right? Well, he goes, maybe it's something crazy like that. Maybe you need to be a chef somewhere and serve people food, and that's going to be your calling. Maybe you're going to be a missionary in like a 5th or 4th world country. Maybe, he like looks down his nose, he's like, I don't know, maybe the Holy Spirit's calling you to live in New York for 5 years and just do what you love. Like, what's going on? And I'm like, when he said that, I go, and all of my 8th grade guys go, and I just looked at him, I was like, chill. And so I walk up and I talk to him afterwards, and I go, so let's talk about a couple of things. And he's like, yeah, sure, I've got a few minutes. I go, I'm gonna need you to have at least 10. I don't think you need to have a few, I need you to have at least 10. What did you mean by that last little thing that you said? He goes, what part? And I go, where you're calling off, like, maybe you should be a chef, maybe you should be a missionary, maybe you should. And he goes, oh, you're the guy that was for. And I go, what? Mm-hmm. And he goes, well, in the middle of it, and he showed me his little list. He had like 5 other items, and he said, I had other things to say, but I felt like I needed to say that because someone needed to hear it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Apparently I needed to hear it. But do you know, like, I need more. Like, I need to know do you know anything more on that? Was that just a little nudge? Did someone put you up to it? And he goes, no, but if that's what you should be doing, then you should be preparing for the day that you get to go and do that. I was like, okay, cool. But I don't see myself going back home anytime soon, and I don't see a theater program, like a community here that I can do theater in. And he just looked at me, and he just smiles, and I'm like, I don't like the fact that you're smiling at me like that. Like, okay. And he goes, you're going to be home like in 3 days. And I was like, this is pretty cryptic. Honestly, I'm not supposed to go home for another 3 months. And fun fact, I plan on staying afterwards. He was like, don't get comfortable. You're going to be home in 3 days. And 3 days later, I'm back in Lebanon, Tennessee. Like, what? How does that even happen? Well, then 2 hours after me being back, I'm working on a set for Peter Pan, and I'm working on the lighting for Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, and I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Like maybe, just maybe, might be what I need to be doing. And I ended up getting to take 6 months off of school to decide again. So right there, I'm a year behind on school, and I'm watching all of my friends in their junior year of college. Oh my gosh, comparison brings about either pride or shame. Remember that. And it's rarely pride on our part. Trust me, it's usually shame. Well, I'm seeing all these things happen, and I'm doing musicals in Nashville. I did 9 shows in 6 months, 4 of which I got paid to do. Like, I was making a living off of something that people told me I couldn't. And I was like, this is insane. This is awesome. And I was like, but now I need to go to school somewhere because I've already got 3 years of school and like in my belt. Like, what am I going to do with this? I've got this theology program in my brain. I've got communications, and now I've got these shows. What's next? Well, I have a friend who was going to Cumberland at the time, and they're like, hey, come hang out for a little bit. Like, I'm just going to do some stuff in the Phoenix Nests. And I was like, okay, fine. Well, the Phoenix Nest used to be like that little spot where everything is now, as well as like this open room where they have all the couches now and where the bookstore usually decides to take up residence at the beginning of the semester. So there used to be a piano in there. I had just started learning how to play piano earlier that summer because during my spare time I was like, what do I do with this? Like, I'm not able to create, I'm not able to do anything. And the person that I was staying with just so happened to be the grand concert pianist of Scotland in the 90s. And I'm like, do you think you could teach me to play piano? And she goes, what if I can't? No one can. So I was like, okay, cool. So she was teaching me how to play piano. So I'm playing piano down in the Phoenix Nest, beautiful acoustics, I'm singing, just jamming. And then out of nowhere, this relatively shorter, bald South African man walks into the Phoenix Nest because the piano I was playing was supposed to be locked and is only supposed to be played by said bald South African man himself, Dr. Killian. I didn't know what was going on. He was like, I was like, hi. He's like, you're Jeremiah, aren't you? And I go, yeah, how do you know who I am? Like, I was super confused. And he said, well, 3 years ago, you were singing in front of Walmart, which, to give you a little bit of context, I do bell ringing for the Salvation Army on the side whenever it's time for that. So instead of bell ringing, I sing the entire time. Brings in so much more money and donations that way. So he goes, you were singing in front of Walmart, and I sat and listened to you sing Oh Holy Night. And he goes, I walked up to you and said, you know, if we fixed some of your tone and timbre and we put your vibrato in the right place, you'd be awesome. And I was like, I actually, oddly enough, remember that critique. And I was just like, how do you still remember me? And he goes, well, I don't usually forget people at like people's faces or anything. And I also remember that I offered you money to come sing at Cumberland, but you said you were going to Trevecca. I said, yeah. And he goes, are you still going to Trevecca? And I said, no. And he goes, oh, well then come to my office. Well, by the end of that day, and literally a week and a half before classes started, he had given me money to start here in the voice program. And that led into me starting to do theater here and getting to meet Professor Bird, who some of you may be terrified of. I pinky promise. He is a cuddly bear on the inside. You just have to really dig to find it, okay? He's a great guy. Well, then I met him and he said, well, for the music qualifications, because I was like, I'm going to do musical theater at Cumberland. Well, they have a music theater program, not a musical theater program. There's a difference. One is 8 years worth of work, 8 years. And the other one is me just finishing out the rest of my undergrad. And I was like, okay, cool. What do I do? And Professor Bird was like, well, we can both give you money if you would just be a theater major. I was like, wait, you want me to major in acting? That's a bad idea. And he's like, no, do it. So I trusted him. And from that, I ended up getting a full ride here to do something that before I was told don't do. Now, did I tell my parents? No, they may or not have thought I was still a somewhat medicine something major. When I got here, I was like, yeah, they've got a great nursing program, don't they? And my mom and dad automatically assumed that I was going to be a male nurse. And I was like, I'm going to let you keep thinking that. Up until like my last semester of college where I was like, hey guys, so I'm graduating this spring and it'll be in a degree in theater. I'll have a BFA in the arts. And my mom was like, I mean, it doesn't surprise me. If you can make a living off of it, do it. My dad was like, fine. But then we got to talk through it. This entire time I'd been told, you don't have enough time to do this and this, and it just doesn't make sense to pursue a career in theater, to pursue it at all. Honestly, right now, think about the massive joke that I feel like right now, graduating with an undergrad, a bachelor's in theater, during the middle of a pandemic. Wow, does that sound like so much fun? It's actually terrible. Like Mike said, I actually, during my last semester here, I had auditions to go and do shows in New York, in Chicago, in London. Like, to name off a few shows, well, this mask is Finding Neverland, one of my favorite shows. Had an audition for that, got a role in it. It got canceled because the national tour got canceled. I'm sure some of you have seen Hamilton, right? I auditioned for Hamilton, got 2 roles in 2 different cities to do 2 6-month contracts as both of those roles. It's canceled. It's gone. It doesn't exist. Like, because theater is originally, it wasn't going to be allowed until January of 2021. Now it's November 2021. So my life is just kind of like taking this giant weird turn of events. And to put it on top of that, a lot of the things I do, because the title of this was called Fragile but Resilient. And you're like, you've not gotten there yet. What are you talking about? I'm pretty sure, I'm running out of time, but the idea behind that is I have a skin condition known as epidermolysis bullosa. simplex. We could go, there's more names to add on to it, but you're like, you did what in this cup? Okay, so this skin condition kind of prohibits me from doing a lot of different things that I would love to do. Would have loved to make my dad proud to go to the military, but the military won't allow me because of my skin. And you're like, well, what's so special about it? Well, everyone's skin is connected like this. We'll say like Velcro hooks, like a chain. Like it doesn't move when you fall, and when it does, it tears away and it creates cuts. Well, my skin is connected like this. And so anytime there's any form of rough friction or I fall, it just tears away or it blisters. So the fact that I'm able to run 6 or 7 miles a day whenever I want to, like, that's a big thing. The fact that I'm actually able to talk with you guys all today is a super big thing too, because people with my skin condition, we're fragile, and a lot of times we can't talk. But by the grace of God, like, that I'm able to. I'm not only able to talk, I'm able to sing. I'm able to make funny voices for all of you guys to hear, okay? I'm able to go outside and play and do all the things. You're like, a grown man said play. Yes, I said play. I get to go outside and play in the rain, okay? I get to do all those things, and I get to create so many wonderful things. So my body's fragile, but because I have tough parents, mainly because of my dad being as strict as he was, and my mom said, if a bone's not hanging out, you're not dying, I've become resilient. Human life is resilient. All of you guys are. Though, do I really feel like I'm unbreakable right now because I've got my undergrad? No. Honestly, there are people who didn't go to college that are making more money than I am right now doing what I love, right? I don't feel that unbreakable. If anything, I feel even more fragile than ever because an art form that I love, something that I staked my first part of my college career of my undergrad, it can very easily, in the way that we're doing right now, it could be taken away because of something that we have no control over, right? So I don't feel all that unbreakable, but I do know that it's not over. It just feels like it's over, right? We've still got a chance to do awesome, amazing things. And during this time where I can't do one of the things I love, even though it is literally my life and what I opened up an acting and voice studio off of, what I teach group classes out of, and what I was hoping to move out of state and go and do, though I can't do that anymore, I can still create. And that's kind of what I've done recently, is actually write a song called While We Weep. We can be honest and say that 2020 as a whole has not been fun, right? If any of you in here are like, yeah, 2020 has been great. Have you been living under a rock? Okay, 2020 has been kind of terrible. Okay, we've had a lot of things in January. Australia was on fire. California is now on fire. We had murder hornets. We've had the coronavirus. We've had, we could keep going on and on and on. We've had racial tensions. We've had, we have an election coming up. We have all the things happening. And the truth is, it's not gonna stop. The truth is, life doesn't stop. But we have the opportunity to, instead of breaking, bend just a little bit so that we come back stronger. Okay, I wrote this song. It's called While We Weep. About a month. And it really came from the yearnings and the pains that 2020 has brought, right? There's been a lot of pain. There's been a lot of suffering. And I'm not saying the suffering and pain wasn't there before, but it's on full display right now. No matter who you are, you're feeling it in some way. Right now, you guys are all starting out your journeys in college. Some of you may not finish, right? Some of you may go to technical programs. Some of you may go straight into the working force. Some of you may get your associates, may get your bachelor's, may get your master's. And if you're a really crazy person, you'll get your doctorate, okay? You may do all of that, but life is going to keep going. Everyone's got different paths. Everyone's got different struggles. But the one thing that we all have in common is that we're all human. We all have feelings, we all have emotions, and honestly, if we don't process them well, guys, you'll break. You won't bend. There's no resilience in breaking. There's resilience in bending, okay? We have to bend. The only way to do that is to breathe and sometimes cry or, weep, as the song suggests. The song is actually based off of John 11, where Jesus is going and he's like going back home, and Mary, Martha, and everybody else is like, Lazarus has died, and they're so upset. They're angry at Jesus because they're like, if you're the God that you say, or he could have just snapped your finger, thought about it, and Lazarus would have been okay. But Jesus was trying to use this as a process. Whether or not you have, your faith in God, or you're a Christ follower, a Christian, whatever you want to say, he was using this moment in the story for a lesson. He was using it to exemplify the exact nature of the human condition, that we would much rather build it in and be angry and point our disgust towards something else rather than just, we don't understand, and cry. Jesus got there, and in my opinion, the two strongest words and the single most important verse in the Bible for this day and age right now is, Jesus wept. We have a lot of people who are angry and are doing a whole lot of other things rather than just facing it and crying. The truth is, whether or not you're on the same faith views as I am, I understand, right? There's some people who would think, well, that's some Christian mumbo jumbo. Well, if you look at it from a psychological standpoint too, you have to cry. You have to process those emotions. You have to know that this moment will be used for something greater in the future, right? And so that's why I wrote it. We're a hurting nation and we needed an outlet. So I think I have used my time. I don't know how much time chapel usually takes, but I think with this last bit of time, I'd like to do this song for you guys.
You get through it and I'll take this over.
Okay. Also, if you guys want to socially distance and come over here so you can at least hear, because I'd feel bad if you guys are all over there by yourself. Or there's this great idea of moving the piano. That works too. Look, don't move the piano. I'm going to put it right there. There we go. So during this time, I do want to invite you all, just like in a moment, to just have a second of worship, whatever that looks like. This song is definitely geared towards a churchy vibe, and that may not be everybody's bread and butter, right? But I do want you guys to at least hear the words. I do truly believe these things to be true in this song. And honestly, if you feel like you've got a lot going on, you probably do. And it's okay to just cry or to talk about it. Talk about our feelings. Let's process them. Should probably turn my phone off low power. Turn off low power. Thanks, Siri. There's power hearts were filled with worry, with